Okay, I've started the recording, so let's get kicked off. Thank you everybody for joining. If there are any audio difficulties, please drop a note there in the chat window, and I'll do our best to get that sorted out right away. In fact, let me drop a note here now. Okay, great. So if anybody has any audio difficulties, just drop a note there in the chat window. So what we're going to do today is talk about the software industry job outlook and desired skills for new software engineers. So by way of quick introductions, my name is Chris Hust. I'm the president of CompuScholar. I've actually spent quite a few years in the software industry, writing a lot of code. I've also had the opportunity to be a consulting firm owner and have conducted many interviews trying to place candidates in specific jobs for the companies that I worked for. So I do have some experience on the other side of the desk, so to speak, and have seen a wide variety of interviews and candidates over the years. So that is the perspective that I'm bringing to the conversation today. If you want to get a hold of me, you're always welcome to shoot me an email here at chris.hust@compuscholar.com. Always happy to have a chat with folks outside of the webinars as well. A couple of quick logistical notes. I do have everybody muted in order to minimize the background noise. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If you do have questions, I encourage those throughout, so don't be bashful while asking questions. Just drop those there in the chat window. I've got that up on the side here. I will see your question and respond to it when it comes through. We are recording the conversation, and we'll post that online for the folks that couldn't make it live. And in the unlikely case that we have some sort of technical difficulties, we will continue offline and just record the remainder and post the entire thing. So that is the plan. And as a reminder, this is part of our Teacher Success Program. So we really want to partner with you throughout the year and provide these enrichment opportunities, provide some additional professional development training. And we really want to do this for you and address topics that are interesting for you. So if you have particular things that you would like us to talk about in an upcoming webinar, please do shoot us an email and let us know. We'll be happy to factor that into our plans. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're really going to cover three main areas, and it really won't take us that long. We're going to cover the outlook for software engineers in today's industry based here in the United States. We will talk about the particular selection of programming languages that your students might want to pursue and why you might want to do some more than others. And we will also talk about personal skills a little bit. This is actually very important, from my perspective and my experience, so I can share a little bit about what it takes to be successful in a professional environment, regardless of your coding skills. And then, as always, we'll reserve a few minutes at the end for a general purpose CompuScholar forum. So if you've got a question that's burning a hole in your pocket that is not related to the topic today, just hang on to it until the end, and we'll make a few quick announcements and open the door to any additional questions that might pop up. So that's the plan. All right, so we'll start with the software engineering job outlook. And if you've talked to Andrew Abdallah from CompuScholar during an initial presentation, I'm sure you saw his graphic and talk about how good the job industry is for software engineers. And nothing has really changed from that perspective. The employment market is still great. So what we see is a really substantial growth pattern over the next decade. So a 24% growth in the job market for software engineers here in the United States. And it's based on data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that's an excellent growth rate compared to many other industries. We also see that the unemployment rate is somewhere between 1% and 3%, depending on who you talk to. There's a lot of online sources that will calculate those things a little bit differently. But the national average these days is around 4.5% for unemployment. So you can see unemployment amongst software engineers is significantly less than unemployment for the general population. And that has held steady and true, relatively speaking, over the last many years. Even when we had unemployment up to 7, 8, or 9% on the national average, the unemployment rate for software engineers was still a pretty healthy 3 to 4%. So as we all know and suspect, there just aren't enough software engineers to go around. And so the unemployment rates reflect that, and the salaries also reflect that. And again, if you have any questions, don't be bashful about just dropping them there in the chat window, and we'll address those when they come up. Okay, so let's talk about salaries for software engineers. This is the fun part. So an average entry-level software engineer these days tends to make between $60,000 and $80,000 a year. And you can compare that to the national average for any other sort of general purpose four-year degree, which might start off in the $40,000 range. So you can see there's a really significant salary advantage to becoming a software engineer. And these numbers are kind of fuzzy with a broad range because, again, it depends on where you go to in order to get your numbers and how they define software engineer versus computer programmer and that sort of thing. But big picture, if you have kids that are considering this as a degree, as a career, then certainly you can encourage them to do that. After you've been in the industry for a while, once you get some experience under your belt, the average salary for all software engineers is in the six-figure range. So it is not uncommon for having to find software engineers that are going to make $100,000 a year, and that works out to on the order of $50 an hour for their services. So again, it's a great starting salary, and the salary does go up based on your skills and experience. And if you are one of the top performers at a really good company, you could certainly look north of 150 for kind of that top line software engineering salary. We do have a couple of sources here I've cited, and I actually wanted to show you some of the different websites just so you can get a feel for all the information out there. So let me click on this first one at payscale.com. Hopefully that'll pop up the right thing. There we go. So this is a report on entry-level software engineering salary, and you can see the median they've calculated based on their metrics was $76,000 and change. They've also listed some additional bonuses and commissions and things like that that might be earned over time with software engineers. So this is just one way to look at it. Let me close this down. Let's click on the next link. This is the link to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So they've got a job description for software developers and applications. Again, you can see the average annual wage here is in the six-figure range, which is what we said before. And there's all sorts of good data here if you want to look at it and really kind of drill down into your particular area. So if you're in Texas, for example, you can look and see, is Texas a state that really does heavily employ software engineers? And it is. Whereas if you live in North Dakota, for example, that might be a state where there are correspondingly fewer software engineers. So you can break this down by all sorts of metrics, locations, average wages by state, breaking it down into even smaller and smaller areas. So again, there's a wealth of data out here at your fingertips. It just takes a little bit of searching to find this information. And this is information that you can use with your own students. So if you've got students that are thinking about signing up for your class in a public school, then you can certainly derive information from these sources to show them this is a pretty good idea. And if you are a homeschool parent or an individual parent trying to encourage your child to pursue a job that will let them take care of you in your old age, then this is certainly a good choice as well. All right, so that is the salaries. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about programming languages. So I did some research on this, and what I found was that you can go to a bunch of different websites and get rankings for the most popular languages that are used in today's market. Everybody seems to do it a little bit differently. Some of them will predicate their rankings based on projects they find in GitHub. Some of them will do it based on surveys of job openings. So there is a kind of a wide range if you go and you look at these kinds of rankings. So I've got some languages that are listed here in no particular order. So I'm not saying that C and C++ is first or last. It just happens to be first in the alphabet. So these are the languages that tend to crop up near the top of most of the list. We've got C and C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, and SQL. And if you think about it, this really covers the full gamut of your front-end client applications, which might be written in JavaScript or HTML on a web page. And then you've got your middle tier of business logic that could be written in PHP or C# or Java. And then you've got your back-end database SQL type stuff that's also very, very important. So there's no surprise that there are languages from all three of your stereotypical application tiers here, the client tier, the business tier, and then the database tier. And what you will find as a software engineer is it's important to be somewhat conversant in a number of things and not pigeonhole yourself into one language. I do want to show you a few example websites just so you can get an idea of the breadth of the rankings out there. So again, these are in no particular order. They're all fairly current 2017 type rankings. So in-demand languages, you can see Java, C, C++, Python, C#, PHP, Visual Basic.net. So they've got a little description about how they see these things being used here. You can go to a different one. I think I clicked on it. Here we go. Top 10 programming languages in demand right now. They make it sound really exciting. SQL, Java, PHP, JavaScript, C++, C#. So it's the same suspects. It's just arranged in a slightly different order. And like I said, everybody kind of has their own factoring for how they do these rankings. And I'll show you the third example very briefly. Okay, 9 in-demand languages. These folks actually rank SQL at the top, then Java, Python, JavaScript, and so forth. So no matter how you slice and dice it, you seem to come across the same half dozen or so languages that are near the top of the heap. And this is actually pretty interesting because I do talk with parents from time to time. We do get calls from parents that ask questions about the particular language that they have, and they're very, very concerned about picking the right language. In fact, this is kind of a common question that we get, not only from parents, but some teachers, is which language should we pick to teach my middle or high school student? Because I really want them to get a great leg up in the job market. I want them to be employable. I don't want to teach them a dead language. So really, what language should we pick? And they're waiting for this answer with bated breath. And here's my answer. It doesn't matter at all. At this level, these are middle and high school students. They are not employable by and large. These are students that we are trying to encourage to become computer scientists. We are trying to encourage these students to get into that 4-year degree program, whereupon when they graduate, they will then be employable. And so by the time they get through that 4-year degree program, they will certainly have experience in a number of different languages. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into Java. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself into JavaScript. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself anywhere if you can help it. Your job prospects will certainly be enhanced if you are multilingual. I have found that to be true in my case personally, and for the people that we interviewed. So what we find in today's industry is that many companies grow by acquisition. So many of the companies that I worked for would acquire different companies and then integrate their technology. So no matter how pure you start off in one particular language, you will over time start accumulating bits and pieces of software from other companies and other languages. So it is not uncommon at all to have a code base at a company that is a mixture of Java and C# and C++ and everything under the sun, just because that's the way it worked out over time. You may even have different groups within the same company that pick different languages for different reasons. So I have in my own career, at times had both Visual Studio and Eclipse up on my screen at the same time and switched back and forth pretty seamlessly in order to get things done on 2 different languages. So I really do want to encourage students not to worry too much about their first language, but just be broad-minded and learn a number of languages. You'll find that the computer science concepts are all very, very similar. So once you've learned your first language, it's much easier to pick up the rest of them. And as long as you have a good experience with your first language, meaning if you learn C# or if you learn Java or Visual Basic or C++ or whatever it is the first time, hopefully that is a good experience for you, and it encourages you to continue down the computer science pathway and pursue that degree where you will gain experience in all of the other languages. So sometimes people don't want to hear that answer because they're really concerned about the job market. But the reality is, at the age that we're talking about, the middle and high school kids, you just want them to be successful in whatever language they pick. And so that's a combination of curriculum and teaching and aptitude by the student. All right, so the last topic we wanted to cover very, very briefly was personal skills. And I have seen this over my career as a software engineer, so some of this is anecdotal. But when companies are hiring candidates, they are looking for very particular things. And then for candidates that do get hired, certain things will tend to either foster their growth or hinder their growth. And so we want to make sure skills are developed to foster growth in your career. So what's the short answer here? Be smart and get things done. That is a quote and a philosophy that has been expressed by a gentleman named Joel Spolsky. He's a software engineer, an author, a blogger of some note, and so this is how he summarizes his interviews and what he's looking for in candidates. He wants candidates that are smart and gets things done, and he's not the least bit concerned about the alphabet soup of acronyms that you have on your resume, because somebody that's smart can figure things out, and it doesn't matter what language they know. If they need to learn a different language, they will learn it and be off to the races. So that's the short, pithy answer. And of course, it's kind of difficult to discern that in an interview that lasts 30 minutes or even 4 hours. So there's all sorts of approaches to the interview process to try and figure out, is my candidate smart and can my candidate get things done? I can editorialize a little bit with a longer answer here for some particular skills that I have noticed are sometimes overlooked. So communication skills are just vital. It is stereotypical that you have software engineers that sit in your cube and they don't talk to anybody and they just write code all day long. And they really have the caveman style communication skills. And you will find those folks in the industry. But by and large, they're going to pigeonhole themselves into a low-ranked coder role, and they're not going to be able to advance as fast as somebody with good communication skills. In particular, documentation is super important. So you need to be able to write well. You need to be able to write requirements documents. You need to be able to write design documents. You need to be able to express yourself. You need to be able to explain things clearly to an audience. You need to be able to win people over to your point of view. If there are a number of approaches to something and you want your approach to win, then what I have found is the first person that writes something down with a reasonably clear diagram and a demonstration of how it's going to work will frame the conversation for the rest of the team. And so there are leaders and there are followers, and the leaders tend to be those that can communicate well, can write well, and can express themselves in a written document. In terms of other types of communication, obviously the ability to write coherent emails, to speak well, to chat well, all of these things are super important because it's easier to work with those types of people, and they will tend to get fostered further along in their career. On the same line, interpersonal skills are also critical. So there are very, very few software packages that are written by individual heroes these days. Almost everybody works as a team. So you need to be able to get along with folks and have a conversation with them and look them in the eye and shake their hand and do all those basic things that when you experience that yourself from other people, you think, hey, this is a good person to work with. I'm going to go to this person for answers. I'm going to go to this person for help. I'm not worried about any personal drama from this side of the house. So interpersonal skills are definitely important. It's something that's very, very hard to teach. I have 2 boys myself, and they're in the teenage years, and some of their interpersonal skills are quite lacking. And that's a source of frustration to me, but it's an opportunity as a parent and a teacher to try and foster those things and point out, hey, when you need to talk to an adult or a teammate, you need to stand up straight, you need to look them in the eye, and you need to speak where they can hear you, right? Sometimes that's difficult for students, but you have to start somewhere. And so certainly do encourage those types of interpersonal skills. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is an employee or a software engineer that understands the big picture and what the company is going for will over time be at an advantage to those people that don't understand what's going on or don't really have an opinion. So there are folks that will sit in their cube and they will receive design specifications and they will happily bang out the code without really putting a lot of thought into why they're doing what they're doing. And is this the best for the customer? Is this the best for the company? Is there any other way to do this that might make more sense? Then there's folks that do ask those questions. So if you're given either a specific design document or a broad set of requirements and you're able to ask the questions, is this good for the customer? Is this good for us as a company? Where do we want to go strategically in a few years? How are we going to support this? Is this going to perform well? Can I draw an architecture diagram that makes sense? All these things will tend to promote people into the team lead roles, into the system architect roles, into the higher powered software development roles, if you can demonstrate some concern for the big picture of the company. So all these personal skills that I've enumerated here are things that you will rarely see on prep lists for engineering jobs, and unfortunately they're sorely overlooked. So in my experience, both personally and professionally, I was moved along pretty rapidly at companies that I worked for because I was able to demonstrate the ability to communicate, to document things in writing, and to explain ideas. And so that actually has carried over into the curriculum as well, and is one of the reasons we started off at CompuScholar writing curriculum for kids. Is sometimes it's a rare combination of engineering talent and communication ability that you need in order to write curriculum for kids. So if you have any other thoughts or questions on the personal skill front, I'm happy to talk about that offline. So a question here has come in. So in terms of the interview process, what kinds of questions tend to be asked to figure out these skills, these soft skills? So that's a good question. And everybody has a different approach. I've seen hiring managers that will sit there and ask you nothing but brain teasers and see how you crack under pressure. I've had managers that will sit there and ask you, draw elaborate architecture diagrams and ask you a series of leading questions, trying to get you to think through what they're diagramming. So there is no one right answer. It tends to be popular to actually make people write code, right? So if you're smart, you should be able to write some code to a quick verbal discussion. And all these communication skills will come through from the very moment that the interviewee walks through the door, right? Do they look you in the eye? Do they shake your hand? Do they sit up straight? Are they able to answer your questions quickly and clearly? So it is challenging. I'll be honest. It is very challenging as an interviewer to identify people that are truly smart, can truly get things done. I've had some folks that I thought can pass my own interview process very, very well, and we hired them and they flamed out. And we've had some people that we hired that we felt like were borderline cases, and they really blossomed into the role. So I don't have a silver bullet answer for you. If I did, I would be an extraordinarily rich author. But thank you for that question. All right. So we're going to move on to the quick CompuScholar form here as we wrap up. I'll just make a few announcements. And again, if you have any general purpose CompuScholar questions, now's the time to roll them out. So our ongoing teacher outreach should be visible to you. So we do have a customer service representative that will email all of our teachers about once a month, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, with something that is topical for that month, maybe a report of your classroom usage, maybe just to make sure that you have everything you need to get started. So if you are awaiting that contact and you feel like something is dropped there, let me know. But I suspect everybody on our teacher list is getting contacted that way. The next announcement, and you can see more online on our login page. There's a link there. We are working on new programming exercises. So we are adding these work with me in lesson coding exercises to our Java programming class. So there are some in there now, and we are adding more. We're going for more of a one-to-one mapping of lessons to exercises. So this just gives kids additional opportunities to write code and become comfortable with the subject matter before they move into the chapter activities and the exams. I got a question here about the other courses. So we are working on additional coding exercises for the Windows programming class, the C# class, as well as our Visual Basic class. So those will all come over the next 6 months or so. Java will probably be the first one that we roll out, hopefully over the Christmas break. Some of our other classes, like the Unity game programming class, the web design class, and so forth, those already have a one-to-one mapping of coding exercises per lesson where that's feasible. Okay, thank you. And then the last little note, our next monthly webinar is tentatively going to be about the Unity IDE. So we will demonstrate the Unity IDE and discuss how you can teach programming skills in this gaming-centric environment. We find that video games tend to be very attractive to a large segment of the student audience. And so wrapping a programming course around the Unity IDE is something that we're really excited about. And that's really a carrot or a lure to get kids into computer science. But at the end of the day, they're going to walk out of that class with good coding skills. They'll understand object-oriented programming and functions and loops and arrays and everything. So that's our tentative topic for January. I encourage you to go sign up for that on our website. I think we might need to get that posted. It's probably not up there yet, but it should be up there soon. So if anybody else has any additional questions or feedback that are general purpose, now's the time. Go ahead and drop those in the chat window. And if not, we will wrap it up here in just a moment. Okay, I don't see anybody typing there, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If you do think of a question, you're welcome to shoot me an email or give us a call, and we can continue the conversation. So thanks so much for your time today. I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to chatting with you again in January. Bye-bye.